Derek, what made you want or need to be an actor?
It is a cliche, I think, but like all cliches, it's absolutely true. I was born an actor. I don't know where it came from. There was nothing in my background. I was an only child. Nothing in my background, my family, to suggest anything to do with culture, let alone theatre. We didn't have many books in the house, I remember. But from my earliest recollection, I was dressing up in my parents' clothes, playing in the street with the other kids, and the wind changed and I stayed like it. But where that gene came from that got in on the night of my conception, I've no idea. But a gene certainly did.
You have quite a distinguished academic background, having majored in history at Cambridge. At that point, were you already planning to be an actor?
Yes, I went to Cambridge with the firm idea that I was going to be an actor because I'd heard that either Oxford or Cambridge were hotbeds of acting, and a lot of actors and directors particularly had been to Oxford or Cambridge and gone on to the professional theatre. So while I was at Cambridge reading history, I was acting all the time. And by the end of 3 years, I'd done a lot of practical acting in front of live audiences. And then it was a decision either, when I finished at Cambridge, I was only just 22. Should I go to drama school or should I try and get into the profession? And I wrote begging letters to various repertory companies, and I got into Birmingham Rep, where I stayed for the next 3 years, and that became my school, my drama school. So I didn't actually go into a drama school classroom to learn, which I don't think can teach you to be an actor anyway. It can teach you what gifts you have or what gifts you need to develop, but it can't teach you how to be an actor. You're that already, if you're ever going to be one.
Many people know you as Emperor Claudius from I, Claudius and Brother Cadfael. So many of your best known roles have been period drama. Does that reflect your own interests or is it just serendipity?
It's serendipity, I think. It's just how the career has worked out. I've never had any game plan in my career. I've had a great deal of luck. And okay, I had the talent to fulfill the luck, but the fact that I kept working ensured that I was getting experience and getting better. So I feel a bit awkward sometimes talking about my life in art or the art in my life.
You know, your mutton chop sideburns in the BBC adaptation of The Pallisers rendered you nearly unrecognizable to a lot of your fans. And in the Cadfael films, you had a tonsure. And of course, there's the famous nose in Cyrano de Bergerac. Are these among the most extreme physical transformations you've had to go through in roles?
Oh, gosh. No, the famous Cyrano was Ralph Richardson. And just before I was about to do it, I saw him in a play, and I was taken round to meet him afterwards. And I told him I was going to play Cyrano. And he said, well, dear boy, have two noses. And I said, why two noses? And he said, well, the first two acts are about a nose, so make it big and long. The last three acts, people have forgotten about the nose then. So have it shorter. It's much easier to cope with. I didn't have to, actually, because, of course, when he played it, he had plasticine. When I did it, we were into prosthetics, which was much, much easier. I think the hardest disguise, really, that I've ever had to do was Claudius, playing the old man, which took... This was in the early days of prosthetics. This was 1976. It took 6 hours to make me up as the old Claudius, because each piece had to be put on separately, then they all had to be molded into one, and I used to have to get there at kind of 5 o'clock in the morning to be on set by 11 o'clock Betty. That was agony. It was worse actually for the poor makeup lady, because at least I could kind of lie flat and nod off occasionally, whereas she had to work flat out for 6 hours on me.
As many times as I've seen you on stage, every time I see you in another play, it's not my friend Derek I'm seeing, it's that character. I don't even think about you. So there must be something very transformative about the acting experience.
Oh, I think that's true. I think maybe that's one of the reasons I do it, or many actors do it. You know, I live in the world of my imagination. I live in the world of let's pretend. I don't cope very well with real life, but up there, I know the plot. I know what's going to happen. I know the beginning, the middle, and the end. And in that sense, it's much easier, and I can lose myself in that. I can pretend. I can imagine all those things that I lack in myself.
From Hamlet to Cadfael to Emperor Claudius and I, Claudius, to Alan Turing and Breaking the Code, and even Hitler in Inside the Third Reich. A lot of your characters, even though they're part of the establishment, are really outsiders. Is there anything particularly that draws you to that kind of role?
As I said, I've very rarely in my career chosen a part. The parts have chosen me. I haven't gone out there and say, look, I think I've got an Adolf Hitler inside me, or indeed an Alan Turing. But somebody else has come to me and said, I think there's an Adolf Hitler lurking in there, or there's an Alan Turing in there, or there's a Cyrano. My reaction normally has been, is there? Well, I wasn't aware of it, but if you think he's in there somewhere, let's try and find him.
Do you have any particular favorite roles?
Well, I've had so many favorite roles over the years. I think on stage, certainly Hamlet, certainly Cyrano, certainly Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing, Prospero in The Tempest, Philip II in Don Carlos, which I adored doing, Uncle Vanya, which I've played 3 times now, and Baron Tusenbach in The Three Sisters, I loved. On screen, I, Claudius, certainly. I enjoy filming, but I don't find it nearly as satisfying as theatre.
So what have you learned from other actors and directors?
A great deal. Actors are scavengers. We pinch things from each other. We have a little bag, and we put things in that little bag that we see other actors doing and think, oh, that's quite interesting. That's quite clever. I could use that. Into the bag it goes. So I've done a lot of those sort of things. And of course, having worked with the best, with Olivier and Gielgud and Schofield and Redgrave, my pinching has been called top quality pinching. And the thing I always admired in Olivier were his choices, the choices he made. Because as an actor and as a performer, you are constantly making choices. You are rejecting things or you are accepting things. He had this uncanny knack of making the right choices.
Is acting still a thrill?
Yes. It gets harder. It gets more frightening. I thought it'd get less frightening the older I got, but it's the other way around. I think I still get great excitement, but as I say, I get more fearful, more apprehensive. There's a lovely actress friend of mine, sadly no longer with us, who said that there were 3 categories of actor. Young and talented, lovely category to be in. Experienced and successful, so you've been in work, you're making a living, you're doing okay. And then the 3rd category is distinguished and acclaimed. And once you get distinguished and acclaimed and people start interviewing you like this, it all gets much harder because people's expectations of you are higher. You are, for want of a better analogy, you're the favourite in the race. You're no longer the outsider who can come up and thrill everybody and be courageous and wonderful. You've been around a long time. People's expectations of you are much higher, and they're also putting money on you to win, or at least to become a good second. So the pressures are greater. And while the pressures are mounting, the little grey cells are beginning to drop off. It's harder to learn the lines. It's, just physically, the body is not as good as it was 50 years ago. So it's still wonderfully exciting, but it's more difficult.
What advice would you give to young actors?
That is not easy. That's not an easy question to answer. I would say, if you want to be an actor, don't be an actor. If you need to be an actor, be an actor. I think wanting is not enough. Thinking that, yes, I'd quite like to do that. I think I'd be rather good at that. That's not enough. You've got to have fire in the belly. It's got to be a vocation. You've got not to be able to conceive of your life without it, because it asks that much of you. It demands that much of you. And unless you're prepared to give that, don't go there, because it's not a fair profession. It doesn't owe you a living. It's overcrowded, and it's dangerous. You've got to be brave, and you've got to be committed. Then do it.
Sir Derek Jacobi, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.